Endelea.
Good morning, Kenya. Rise and shine to the morning momentum, your daily dose of a comprehensive rundown of the top stories making the headlines on the paper. It is the 4th of November 2025, and this is a daily compendium of local and international news, human interest stories, current affairs, and expert opinion. Use the hashtag The Morning Momentum at Younib Media TV at Alphonce Albakwekwe. Let's take a look at the top stories on the Daily Nation this morning. On the front page, buried alive is the top story. Now, tragedy, death toll rises to 30 at state reveals 14 learners were among the victims. This is all about the landslides. Now, for residents of some villages in the hilly Elgeyo Marakwet County, the events of the last 4 days are straight out of a horror movie. One moment they are full of life, sharing evening meals before going to bed. The next, they lie either lifeless or injured under heaps of soil and huge rocks. Their homes swallowed by the ground or pounded flat. We'll take a look at that on page 2 and page 3. On page 4 and page 5 this morning, Samia sworn into office in quote-unquote private ceremony. We'll take a look at that. So let's get up close and candid with the nation on page 2. Tragedy in the valley is what we are talking about. Mudslides swallow homes, families, leaving them shattered and in pain. In Keio North, a grandmother and her grandson were killed in a mudslide that struck their home as they were having dinner on Sunday night. Even as Basic Education PS Julius Bitok says, 14 learners are among the dead. It all happened so fast. At one moment they were in deep slumber after a day of hard work, but the next they lay lifeless, buried under heaps of soil that flowed downhill. That story is augmented for you on page 2 and page 3 of the Nation this morning. Let's move on and take a look at page 4. My brush with death in Tanzania. This is a horror recount of Lizzie Adundo Yogo. Now, I noticed a bullet hole and bullet casing right where I had been. I had escaped death by a whisker. Lizzie Adundo Yogo was one of the international observers sent to Tanzania to monitor the elections. Then mayhem unfolded. She tells Tom that the nightmare she went through and how finally she got back home in Kenya. That story is augmented for you on page 4. About the lucky escape, election observer recounts tense atmosphere as Tanzanians cast vote. Tuesday, October 28th, Ms. Yogo arrives in Dar es Salaam in the morning and she's informed that the East African delegation had left Tanzania for Nairobi. On Wednesday, 29th, she wakes up early to prepare for the long day ahead. Her first polling station is Matsapa Primary School by 7 a.m. The ballots are officially opened, but there are no voters. She leaves after an hour of waiting. On Friday, 31st of October, she is at a friend's house in the bathroom having a shower when there is a loud thud in the house. She would later learn that a bullet was fired into the house. On Saturday, November 1st at 1 a.m., she lands at JKIA, thankful to be back home. All right, that is her recount of the deadly scene she witnessed in Tanzania. Let's take a look at page 5. Inauguration. Samia takes office in quote-unquote private ceremony. Ruto Museveni skip event and send deputies. The swearing-in was held at a military base and was closed to the public. Now, President Samia Suluhu Hassan was yesterday sworn in for a second term in office during a tightly guarded ceremony in the administrative capital, Dodoma, vowing to protect and defend the constitution and the unity of Tanzania in the face of sharp criticism from within and without the country. In a departure from other presidential inauguration ceremonies, President Samia's was held at a military parade ground and was closed to the public, only streamed live by the national broadcaster, Tanzania Broadcasting Corporation. Let's take a look at page 6. While Langata's police boss is under IPOA investigation, FAM accuses police of acting against a court ruling issued last year. OCPD accused of ordering the eviction of Thompson Hall Limited from contested Karen property. You want to catch up with that story on page 6. On page 7 this morning about education, that's our best offer. Ogamba tells striking varsity lecturers on pay deal. Education CS Julius Ogamba has told lecturers in public universities that government is unable to pay them all their arrears owed at once, but rather in two phases. This happens as the lecturer strike is in its second month since September, with education in public universities facing a crisis. The lecturers have rejected payment in two phases. That story is augmented for you on page 7. Also this morning, CS cautions cheats as Form 4 exams begin countrywide. A total of 996,078 candidates registered to sit 2025 KCSE exams. He said the ministry is working with the ODPP to take stern action against anyone found aiding students in cheating. You want to catch up with that story on page 7. On page 8 this morning, attempted coup. Ex-military men in failed coup case awarded 7.9 billion shillings. The ex-soldiers were accused of being behind plans to overthrow Moi's government in 1982. Court faults government of disregarding orders issued in favor of the soldiers. You want to catch up with that human interest story on page 8. Let's move on and take a look at page 10. Now, Ruto launches 100 billion shillings or Olkaria fertilizer project. Domestic production aims to provide fertilizer at a low and stable price. Investment projected to yield over 1.7 billion shillings profit annually for Kengen, Ruto says. The launching will create 2,000 jobs during the 2-year period of construction. Dr. Ruto wants the local community to be given priority in employment. You want to catch up with that on page 10. Let's stay on page 10 a little bit on matters politics. ODM moves to fortify Coast stronghold after its leader's death. Now, the Orange Democratic Movement is working to retain support in the Coast region as one of its major strongholds following the death of the party leader Raila Odinga. The party's leadership began a tour of the coast at the weekend, focusing on Mombasa and Kilifi counties. Mombasa Governor Abdul Swamad Nasir, Senator Mohamed Faki, and other elected leaders from the region vowed to ensure that the popularity of the party remains intact. All right, let's take a look at page 11. Puzzle of 21 billion shillings NHIF fictitious claims probe and MPs called fit. Now, a former internal auditor at the National Treasury raised questions on dubious payments. Whereas House was expected to deal with the matter within 90 days, there has been no movement 2 years later. In numbers, 90 is the number of days that the House committee should take to conclude the matter and report back to the National Assembly and the petitioner. 12.3 billion shillings is part of the NHIF's 18.7 billion cumulative earnings for the financial year ended June 2021 that was converted to IBNR claims reserves, according to Mr. Mushere. Also this morning on page 12, court holds works on Key Road after property owners protest. The Environment and Land Court in Thika has temporarily suspended the construction of road linking the Nakuru-Nairobi Highway and the Western Bypass in Gitaru area, Kiambu County. The court blocked the construction after property owners bordering the link road complained that the works had rendered their properties inaccessible. That story is augmented for you on page 12. On page 13 this morning, rise of hate speech alarms Senate. Kahiga's remarks after Raila's death sparked public outcry and ethnic vitriol online. Committee sends NCIC officials away for failing to give satisfactory response. That story is augmented for you on page 13. Now, on page 14 this morning, Deal Room Diaries, Innovators Lesson at Climate Summit. As the entrepreneurs pitched, the investors listened, their minds weighing impact against viability. Now, you want to catch up with that story on page 14. Let's move on and take a look at the expert opinion this morning. Let's not derail women's political futures in Africa. These are sentiments by Evan Mwangi, and he says, and I quote, Hassan's failures are hers alone. They should not be used to undermine the credibility of women leaders across the region. You'll catch up with that on page 16. Also this morning, Youth Innovation Laudable. These initiatives showcase the power of youthful creativity. Sentiments by Helen Danu right there. You want to catch up with more insights on what they are saying right there. Now, this morning on Powering SMEs on the DN2 article, businesses doing its bit to regenerate degraded soils that threaten food production. Focusing on organic waste and transforming it into value-added products, the company supports farmers while restoring soil fertility. Here, waste becomes fertility, fertility becomes food, and food becomes livelihood, completing the cycle. You want to catch up with more of that on on the DN2 article, Powering SMEs, that is published this morning on the Daily Nation. Now, let's move on and take a look at what we have on the counties. We start with Nairobi County. Child safety concerns in Mukuru slum. Now, administrators have expressed concern over the welfare of children in the Mukuru slums in Starehe sub-county, especially during the long November-December holiday period. Starehe Deputy Commissioner John Kisang, Hazina Chief Paul Muoki Mulinge, and his assistant Vincent Ambuga raised alarm over unsupervised activities of children, particularly in the dangerous areas around the Ngong River. Also on matters counted this morning, how forged audits won farm 230 million shillings contract. Court has frozen payment of remaining 166 million shillings of the tender. The tender allegedly riddled with forged documents, misinterpretation and collusion. Now, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission EACC has moved to court seeking to recover 63.7 million shillings paid by Kiambu County government in a controversial tender allegedly riddled with forged documents, misinterpretation and collusion between officials and private contractors. In court filings seen by Nation, the anti-graft body accuses Filtronic International Limited and its directors Bernard Theuri, Chen Ligou, and Martha Washiga of using forged audits, fictitious staff, and falsified bank records to win a 230 million shillings contract for an enterprise resource planning system. That story is augmented for you on page 19. On page 20 this morning, ticking time bomb as Bomet town faces raw sewage crisis. Town faces an acute water shortage which has persisted for the last 1 year. Waste finds its way into nearby storm water drainages, roads, homesteads, and business premises. That story is augmented for you on page 20. This poses a serious health hazard, and let's take a look at what it means. Now, town is also unable to pay Kenya Power an outstanding bill of over 20 million shillings. The sewerage system operates at an average of 300 cubic meters daily, which is below its capacity of 700 cubic meters. Bomet municipality, according to the 2019 National Population Census, had a population of 42,024, but this number is expected to have increased almost tenfold due to rural-urban migration. There has been rapid growth in Bomet town in the last 15 years following the advent of devolution, which saw the opening of Bomet University College with a population of around 7,000 students. Recently, the university admitted 3,150 first-year students, a move that has piled up pressure on real estate developers given high demand for housing units. That story is augmented for you on page 20. Now, let's move on and take a look at the international scene. Long road to healing for survivors in Gaza. Now, PTSD and depression are the most common conditions. Nearly 68% of Gaza's population suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, report says, and you want to catch up with that on page 22. Briefly, in Kinshasa, Tshisekedi talks with M23 rebels to resume in Doha, Qatar. Peace talks between the government of DRC and the March 23 movement M23 rebel group will resume next week in Doha, Qatar. DRC President Felix Tshisekedi has said around 1 million Congolese have been displaced and 27 million people are now threatened by hunger. Let's go to Malawi's Lilongwe. Now, Malawi's fuel supplies hit amid Tanzania crisis. Now, the post-election violence in Tanzania has disrupted fuel supplies to Malawi, with 120 fuel tankers blocked from crossing the common border, according to a statement released by the Malawi Energy Regulatory Authority. Now, in Jerusalem, Netanyahu vows to disarm Hamas despite ceasefire. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed on Sunday to disarm Hamas and demilitarize the Gaza Strip, saying his government would keep targeting remaining militant cells despite a ceasefire that took effect last month. In Kabul, Afghan forces seize 144 people for sneaking into Iran. Afghan security forces have arrested 144 people over attempting to cross the border and sneak into the neighboring Iran illegally, a statement of the National Army in the Western region said on Sunday. That story is augmented for you on page 22. Now, let's take a look at business news. Kenya bets on world's first geopower fertilizer plant. Plant to give between 200,000 and 300,000 tons of fertilizer annually. Upon completion, the facility is expected to stabilize local fertilizer prices. In figures, 1.6 billion shillings is the estimated annual net profit in shillings projected from the plant upon completion. 800,000 is the estimated tons of fertilizer Kenya imports every year. So it is expected that this will strike a balance and also aid in reducing the cost of fertilizer in the country. Let's take out the agricultural sector. State targets non-traditional zones in coffee revival. The government has set up 2 steering committees to spearhead a 2-year drive aimed at reviving coffee farming across the country in the latest official effort to arrest declining production and reverse years of shrinking acreage in traditional highland zones. In a gazette notice by the cooperatives, Cabinet Secretary Wycliffe Oparanya, the committees, a national and a county one, will have a direct role in designing strategies to expand the crop beyond the core coffee belt. All right. Now we take a look at some sporting action. We go to the field. We start with athletics. How father's sacrifice shaped Serem siblings into stars. Serem siblings believe they can reclaim Kenya's lost glory in steeplechase. Mzee Joseph Serem introduced 2 of Kenya's hottest athletics prospects to the sports as kids. You want to catch up with that story on page 30. Let's take a look at football on page 31. Police bet on Serbian coach to turn around team's fortunes. Kenya champs Police FC part ways with coach who guided them to league title. Dusan Stajanovic, 44, holds UEFA A-grade license and has coached in Egypt, Uganda, and in clubs in his native Serbia. You want to catch up with that story on page 31. Also this morning on the cover page, CAF Confederation Cup, Nairobi United eye quarters against Morocco Congolese opponents. Kenyan representatives play Wydad Casablanca on November 23rd. Team technical director Babu says a draw for group stage was fair and his side can overcome opponents. The groups are also classified for you. In Group A, you'll have Algeria, Mali, Morocco, and Cote d'Ivoire. Group B will consist of Morocco, DR Congo, Tanzania, and Kenya. Kenya will be represented by Nairobi United. Group C will consist of Algeria, South Africa, Congo, Brazzaville, and Tanzania. And Group D will have Egypt, the Zamalek from Egypt, Al Masry from Egypt, and then there will be Kaizer Chiefs from South Africa and Zesco United from Zambia. Now, let's stay with the CAF Confederation. Familia 4 for CAF champs Pyramids in group stage. Now, African Champions League holders Pyramids of Egypt will be up against a Familia 4 in the ground phase of this year's competition, but were also drawn with 2 other debatants. Pyramids beat Renaissance Bekene of Morocco 1-0 in the last month's African Super Cup in Cairo, but were paired with them again at the draw in Johannesburg yesterday. So with that story of CAF Confederation Cup, we come to the tail end of the morning momentum this 4th day of November 2025. Thank you so much for staying with us and for watching this program. My name is Alphonse Ouma, and you have a lovely day. Our heartfelt gratitude goes to all those who made this broadcast a success. Behind the lens, Cliff Olo, and the chief controller this morning has been Penina Washera. See you tomorrow, same time, same place. Until then, do have a beautiful Tuesday ahead of you.